All right, our good friend, my post-game partner, Brian Engblom, has joined us this morning after what I believe was a nice cigar smoke on the back porch last night when he got home. What's up, Brian? How are you?
I'm good, boy. I'm stepping right into the middle of this. Yeah, thanks for the invite.
We're not talking about Cooper with Engblom. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about hockey with him. I'm not throwing that at him. We'll deal with that later. With the idiots on this show, we'll deal with that later. Not when we have one of the best analysts in the game on. We're going to talk a little hockey on the ice here. And thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
I just, I love just opening the floor for you because and let you go because there's a lot to this series right now. And let's start with series, then we'll look at the future for the Lightning. But this series obviously tells us a lot about where the Lightning need to go because they got to get through a Panthers team that, I don't know, Brian, they may be better than they were last year. Brad Marchand on a third line. I mean, and that third line was awesome last night. There's a really good team that the Lightning ran into.
I agree with you. I think they are better than they were last year. And you hit the nail. You hit the nail right on the head. That third line, I think, it sort of exemplifies it. Plus, they pick up Seth Jones.
Yeah.
At the trade deadline. That guy's a stud. I mean, he's a really good defenseman. So if they can ever keep Ekblad and Jones in the same freaking game, it might be something.
Right.
But that hasn't happened exactly too much so far. But that means Balinskis drops out, and the kid played pretty darn well for them. So they're deep on defense. They're getting goal scoring from their defense. They are very deep. Even their fourth line is a menace to play against. Bob looks like he went to another level and learned something last year. Look, I mean, he'd won Vezina trophies in the past, right? And he's not young. What is he, 36?
36,
I think. Yeah, 36.
Yeah.
So, he'd won Vezina trophies and stuff before, but he'd never been on a team that was good enough. Was it his fault sometimes? Well, you always start looking at the goalie first, right? But really, he'd never been, on really stud teams too often. But when he went all the way and won, now he's that guy. I mean, you saw it with Vasi, right? As soon as Vasilevsky had won, he'd been to the finals, and then he won. And you can see the difference. You can see the calm. You can see the confidence, all those things. So they've got a big, nasty team that's talented. And, man, can they ever play man-on-man hockey? Like the trust factor of everybody, they all trusted each other. Like, I don't have to go over, I'll support, but I'll go over and just watch because my teammate's going to take care of Braden Point or is going to take care of Kucherov. I'll be right there to help. And then my man's over here. Your man's over there. Your man's over there. I mean, away from the puck, I just kept looking and going, these guys are monsters. I mean, the Lightning couldn't get the game that they want to play, multiple passing, speed game, through the neutral zone, dipping and diving, east-west, north-south, end up at the net, highest scoring team in the league, all that. They had so few chances, so few. So that's frustrating for sure. So I think what happened was, JP, you and I talk about this all the time the last couple of years. You have to be able to play more than one way if you're going to go to the Stanley Cup, because this was the ultimate example. Florida doesn't let you play your game. Because that's the Lightning game that I just described. So you got to go north-south, you got to bang, you got to pop, you got to come off the wall, you got to shoot and retrieve.
Get in front of the net.
You got to out-muscle, you got to play net front, all those things. They've done that in the past, and that's why they have won, because they could play any way you wanted. They didn't show that they could do it consistently. And everybody has their kryptonite, and Florida was their kryptonite. Maybe if they'd have played a different team in the first round, maybe, there are some years where you watch teams win the Stanley Cup and they go, they played that team. Yeah, they know how to handle that. They know how to handle that team. It's a good thing they didn't play that team because they probably would have lost. That's the luck of the draw. But you have to be able to play both ways and be able to beat every style of team. And this turned out to be their kryptonite.
Brian, in this day and age, it's really hard for me to imagine that an NHL team can bully and intimidate another NHL team. But that's what I saw on the ice here in round one, that the Panthers just looked like they intimidated. like you said, they knocked them off their game, and that's what playoff hockey is all about. But were the Lightning intimidated a little bit? Were they bullied?
I think only the individual players can answer that. I think there were times in the game where Florida definitely tested all that. I mean, there was the first two games for sure, three. I would go as far as three. The first two games, though, here, I was between the benches. I mean, man, it was on. It was on every single shift. And they targeted top players. There is no doubt. I mean, I watched Bennett and Kachuk, who are always in the middle of it, and they're pointing and going, we're coming for you. Yeah, and I can't say all the other words, you know what they're saying. Verbal intimidation, absolutely. Yep. Did they target the top players? Did they know exactly who they were talking to? Did they know exactly who they were hitting out there? I said to JP, game one, the early penalty that Kachuk took on Kucherov along the wall for boarding. That set the tone right there. And then he was yapping at him after that. And look, Cooch and Gensel and those guys, they were standing right there and back in their face, and they were giving it to him back. Cooch is, when they're saying, it's you, we're coming for you, he's going, screw you.
Yeah.
And worse words than that, get out of here. And he right back in their face. But Florida has that kind of team. They are abusive, they're rough, and they're talented. That's what makes you really mad. So did the Lightning have as many guys pushing back as maybe a couple of years ago? Remember when the Lightning played the New York Islanders a couple of years ago, and in the warm-up there were 3 or 4 guys from each team standing at the red line, and it was like just step one toe over that red line, and this is going to be an old-fashioned Donnybrook, a full bench clearing brawl before the game even starts. So that was literally an in-your-face team. They don't have that type of team this year. And on the flip side of that, I will say that I'll take the New York Islanders and Lou Lamoriello, who's now been let go. But he had the old fashioned, he would construct his teams. And over the last couple of years of grinding team. This is the kind of team you need in the playoffs. This is the way you have to play. But they didn't have the horses to play the way the game is played during the regular season. They couldn't go. They couldn't play the fast game. They couldn't score enough goals. You have to be able to get there
to the tournament,
in order to play. So the reason I'm using them is that's exactly the flip side of what I'm talking about here.
Right.
You have to be able to do both things in today's National Hockey League, and that ain't easy. Getting the chemicals right without blowing up the lab. That's the key for G.
Oh, we lost Brian.
Uh-oh.
Felt like his phone went.
There he is.
Sorry, we lost you for a second.
Sorry, somebody was ringing through. I had to click it off.
Hey, wouldn't
Appreciate
that.
So
as we look going forward, Brian, we're not firing any players. Yep. Can you hear us? I guess you can't hear us.
Got us?
Lost the audio somehow.
All right. Can you hear us now? Can you hear me now?
Let's see.
Let me text him to go out and come back in.
Yeah, do that. Oh, he's muted now.
Is the mic
How about
on there?
now?
You got it?
Yes,
Okay.
we got you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, somebody clicked in. I clicked it off, and all of a sudden the mic went. Sorry.
We're good.
Stop calling Brian. So as we look forward, does this team need some more grit? There's not a lot. Most of the core is signed for a long time, and I think that's a good thing. People have talked about, do you trade Kucherov? You could get a haul for him. I don't think that's the answer, trading the leading scorer in the league. We've seen this before. I go back to 2018. I think that the Caps kind of bullied the Lightning, and JBB made some changes to get Coleman and Gaudreau and those guys in here. We had in Gord, it was a great third line. So to me, this is more tweaking at the bottom 6 than it is messing with the top 6. What do you think?
Yeah, trading Kucherov, come on. I mean, he might win MVP. He just won his 3rd scoring title, 2nd in a row. The guy's a magician. I mean, he's revered by all the best players in the league. Guys like Connor McDavid look at Kucherov and go, wow.
Yeah.
You don't trade guys like that. That's crazy. He was trying his ass off. I mean, they were in his face. They knew exactly every time he was out there. And the message was heard loud and clear by all the players on Florida. Get in his face. Don't give him a foot and a half out there. And they didn't. And as good as he is, it's pretty tough to fight through that every single shift
Yeah.
for 5 games. So yeah, no, that's crazy. You brought up the Gord line from a couple of years ago. Goodrow was outstanding. That third line is kind of like talking about the third line of floor
Yeah,
that we just talked
exactly.
about.
Yeah.
That gives you depth, and it was a huge. They scored some gigantic goals, right?
Huge, huge.
Series winning goals, making series winning plays, and all the while grinding. So yeah, it's a very fine line. I think yeah, getting some size, and so some response in that respect when it comes to the heavy hitting and the heavy play that we saw in this series. Again, going back to, you don't know who you're going to play, so
Right.
you have to be able to have that. And that's why I said, a few seconds ago, you try to get it right without, get the chemicals right without blowing up the lab. That is the secret. And
Yeah.
man, it is really tough. Ask every GM in the National Hockey League, because the numbers have to fit. And especially because they won the Stanley Cups back to back and went to the finals, every player whose contract is up goes, yeah, I deserve it. And you know what? Management goes, yeah, you deserve a raise. So
Yeah.
some of them they've had to let go. I mean, look at the Sergachev situation. He got himself to what, $8 million, and in the scheme of things, they couldn't keep him because they have so many guys that are making big dollars. So that's the way it is. It's really difficult balance, and because there was a flat cap there for a year or so coming out of COVID and everything, it really hurt. Like it was like. There's never a bad time to win, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it really handcuffed Julian Breezeball and the management because they didn't get the usual bump and the increase in the salary cap. Now there is that increase now, and that helps. So there's a little bit of breathing room. So that will give them time to, move some guys and maybe get the type of sort of higher middle to higher end player that we're talking about, maybe moving into the team.
Yeah. Brian Engblom joining us here, my post-game partner. Defensively, we've talked about the defensive pairing. You're a Stanley Cup winning defenseman. Is there something that needs to be done? I mean, I know Lilleberg and Perbix are younger. I don't think they had the best series. Is there some change that needs to be made with maybe some more stay-at-home, rougher tumbler type defensemen?
Yeah, that's going to be the tough call there. Lilleberg, it was kind of his first real time around of being in there, shift after shift.
Yeah.
He's a tough kid.
He had some moments. He had some good moments, but some bad ones. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he can hit, right? And he'll drop the mitts, all that stuff. But as far as, reading the plays, everything's faster, everything's more intense. Your mistakes, just scream out there. Sometimes you make mistakes in November or in January and you go, oh, got away with that one. Well, you don't get away with much in the playoffs because you're playing with teams that deserve to be there as well. So he got a taste of that. I think that, moving forward, we'll just see how it goes for him. Perbix, same thing. This wasn't the best year for Perbix. He was in and out of the lineup. He was healthy scratched, fairly often. I think his confidence level took a big hit this year, and he didn't have a great playoff series. I didn't think, no. So I think they'll be looking at that. What are we going to do back there? I think JJ Moser, when he came into the team this year, I went, wow. I'd never seen him play that much because he was in the West all the time in Arizona. Yeah. And they weren't a playoff team. We didn't see him much, but I came in the first 2 months or so until he got hurt. I thought, wow, he could really play, and he fit in. And he's a lefty. He was playing the right side most of the time, but he can play the left, all that. And then he got hurt, and I just didn't feel like he got back to the same level after that. I don't know if it's lingering things that, sometimes you get certain types of injuries. I mean, we'll probably hear in the next couple of days, every year, there are some guys will say, well, he's got to have a little surgery for this, got to get, this fixed up, got to get that cleaned up. I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but I wouldn't be surprised we hear that, well, Moser had to have a procedure for this, and then there's rehab, right? Yeah. So something lingering that was there, I'm not sure, but it looked like it to me. So they'll reassess that and, see where it goes, in the off season, see who's available. And again, compare it to how much money do we have?
So in your mind, kind of in conclusion here, it is a tweak that needs to be done. It's not an overhaul, and it's the Lightning are closer than people think, despite going out the first 3 rounds. That's the context that people will throw out. Well, it's 3 first-round losses in a row. We got to make major changes. There has to be context to that. Look who you're losing to, and look how you're losing, right?
That's a great point. That's exactly what you should be looking at. So the Atlantic Division has gone to the finals 5 straight years. The winner of this series has won the cup 3 times. just the winner of that series.
Yeah.
So, to take a breath here. You've got top line Gensel, outstanding. Braden Point, one of the best centers in the league. Kucherov, we already talked about. Anthony Cirelli, outstanding second line center. You can't find, a better one when it comes to changing games and energy and all that. Brandon Hagel, same kind of thing, another career year. So you've got 5 forwards right there that are the keys, and I can go on. The rest is how do you want the mix to look? And Victor Hedman, who's going to be a Hall of Famer. McDonough came back and was the glue. Chernak, the big 3 back there are studs. So you've got the core of a really terrific team. And the rest is every year you mix and match a little bit.
Mix and match. You got to find those.
We'll have some young
nuggets.
guys coming up. We've already seen a couple. Gonsalves played his tail off and, produced some pretty good stuff. Geeky's coming on. We'll see, what happens going into training camp next year.
All right, Brian, thanks for getting up this morning, and thanks for carrying me on the post-game show all year long.
You carried me, buddy.
Thanks for making JP look good all these years.
You're amazing. I've learned so much hockey from you. It's incredible. So I can't wait to get out there and teach you something on the golf course. So
maybe absolutely. We'll definitely have to. Won't take you much to teach me something, I can tell you that. I always tell our boys in the truck there when things are going sideways, and sometimes things are breaking down, I always get on talk back and say, we're all in this alone, buddy. We're all in this alone.
Nice.
Team effort. All right, Brian, thanks so much, man. Appreciate you.
Anytime.
See you
Thanks,
soon.
guys.
All right.
Thanks, Brian.
Awesome.
Be well.